Good day, everyone. Welcome to Global Government News. This is Darko here. Today is August 17th, 2010, and this is the last video of the day. This is economic news. This first article up is from the New York Times. It's titled, China Passes Japan as Second Largest Economy. After 3 decades of spectacular growth, China passed Japan in the second quarter to become the world's second largest economy behind the U.S. According to government figures released early Monday, the milestone, though anticipated for some time, is the most striking evidence yet that China's ascendance is for real and that the rest of the world will have to reckon with the new economic superpower. I don't think so. Says the recognition came early Monday when Tokyo said that Japan's economy was valued at about 1.28 trillion in the second quarter, slightly below China's 1.3 trillion. It says experts say unseating Japan and in recent years passing Germany, France, and Britain underscores China's growing clout and bolsters forecasts that China will pass the United States as the world's biggest economy as early as 2030. America's GDP was about 14 trillion in 2009. And much like many of the jobs that were here in America that went to China, global companies like Caterpillar, General Electric, General Motors, and Siemens, mostly globalist companies as we all know, as well as scores of others, are making a more aggressive push into China, and in some cases moving R&D, research and development centers here as well. Says there are huge challenges ahead, though. Economists say that China's economy is too heavily dependent on exports and investment and that it needs to encourage greater domestic consumption, something China has struggled to do. And so, right now, and it just basically goes on and says how China is real bad, and just like the United States, because they have so many people and they shun global warming, and they won't do anything about fighting climate change. But they got a lot of bodies over there. And what does that mean? Well, it means a lot of workers who are willing to work for next to nothing. So you got cheap labor. And a lot of the companies, like I said, moved to China, which kind of helped them. But it said, they're relying on exports and investments. And so a lot of people around there are living, they have jobs, and they're out there spending money, and they have cash, but their income is very low, and their living conditions are not all that. But I'm not an economist. But I will say, when I remember hearing Bob Chapman, a financial forecaster, a while back, say that when China decides that they will allow their currency to appreciate or start to gain, value, that prices at Walmart will start to go up. Now, I'm not saying that this is why the prices have gone up. It's just the prices have gone up. So it says Walmart Stores, which for years have touted its prowess at lowering prices, has been doing the opposite as it tries to bolster its bottom line amid stagnating sales. A JPMorgan Chase study of a Walmart Supercenter in Virginia found that the world's largest retailer has raised prices by nearly 6% on average over the past 6 weeks, according to the New York Post. Reuters says it was the biggest sequential increase since JPMorgan started the study in January of 2009. Some price hikes were over 60%. And the other thing that I would like to say is this thing called stagflation. And I believe we're in that period where food prices start to really skyrocket. And I covered this in the past week. So I think that stagflation also has a role in why Walmart's prices, that are known for low prices, is starting to go up, because you can only hide the reality of the economic situation for so long. And it says some of the price hikes were considerably larger. For instance, the price of a 32-ounce bottle of Windex household cleaner jumped 50%. A 12-ounce box of Quaker Oats instant grits climbed 65%, and a 50-ounce container of Tide detergent rose by more than 50%. Says the results of the price hike study aren't entirely surprising. Shares of Walmart, which rose at the height of the recent recession, are down more than 2% this year amid lackluster performance at its U.S. stores, where the same stores fell 1.1% during the 13 weeks. And it says Target reported a 2% gain in July, along with Kohl's a 4.1% gain. It says Walmart stopped releasing monthly same-store sales figures for its units last year. And check this out. It says, theoretically, this should be Walmart's moment to shine. U.S. consumer confidence in July was at its lowest point since February. People still want low prices. Unfortunately for Walmart, they would just rather shop at other stores. And last, I think another factor that plays a role with the whole Walmart thing is that a lot of people, including myself, try to avoid Walmart. It is sometimes hard because they do just have super low prices. Well, they have in the past. So people that are trying to get by usually will go there. But yeah, there's a lot of people that try to avoid Walmart just because of their practices and how they treat their workers. So, but this is China slashes U.S. government bond holdings by the largest amount ever. This is a pretty important story. It says China began reducing its holdings of U.S. government bonds again in June, and in fact cut just its holdings by the largest one-month amount ever. This is according to Bloomberg. The nation's holdings of long-term treasuries fell in June for the first time in 15 months, dropping by 21.2 billion to 839 billion. A U.S. government report showed yesterday two-year yields headed for a fifth monthly decline in August, falling today to a record 0.48%. Two-year rates will rise to 0.85% by year-end as the U.S. economy rebounds in 2010 from a contraction in 2009, according to Bloomberg surveys of financial companies. Says reports today will show improvement in housing and manufacturing, signs of stability even as growth is less than expected. This happened as U.S. Treasury yields declined to ever historically lower levels during June, but selling in June wasn't a good move in retrospect. That's because U.S. yields fell even further in July and early in August. This next article is from Bloomberg as well. It's titled, China favors euro over dollar as Bernanke alters path. China, whose $2.45 trillion in foreign exchange reserves are the world's largest, is turning bullish on Europe and Japan at the expense of the U.S. The nation has been buying quite a lot of European bonds, said Yu Yongding, a former advisor to the People's Bank of China, who was part of a foreign policy advisory committee that visited France, Spain, Germany from June 20th to July 2nd. Japan's Ministry of Finance said August 9th that China bought 1.73 trillion yen, or $20 billion more of Japanese debt than it sold in the first half of 2010, the fastest pace of purchases in at least 5 years. Diversification should be a basic principle, Yu said in an interview, adding top-level Chinese central banker told him to convey to European policymakers China's confidence in the region's economy and currency. We didn't sell any European bonds or assets. Instead, we bought quite a lot. Says China's position may make it harder for the greenback to rebound after falling as much as 10% from this year's peak in June. As measured by the trade-weighted dollar index, the nation cut its holdings of U.S. government debt by $100 billion, or 11% through June, from last year's record of $939 billion in July of 2009, according to Treasury Department data released on, today. Finishing up on this article, it says, concern the U.S. economy is faltering. Okay, concerned that I love these, the way they put it, concern the U.S. economy is faltering. No, it's faltering, okay? Was underscored by the Federal Reserve, who said what? It's, what was that term that Bernanke used? Unusually, unexpected? Something like that. By the Federal Reserve on August 10th, Chairman Ben Bernanke said the central bank will reinvest principal payments on its mortgage holdings into Treasury notes to prevent money from being drained out of the financial system. Its first expansion of measures to spur growth in more than a year. It says China's holdings of long-term treasuries fell for the first time in 15 months in June. And it says the nation's overall treasury position declined for a second month to $843 billion, the lowest since May 2009. Treasury data showed. The decline represents the first year-over-year drop in China's Treasury holdings since 2001. This next article is titled, Obama Administration Spending $63 billion on, quote, women-centered global healthcare program. The Obama administration is focused not just on healthcare reform in the United States, but also on improving healthcare systems around the world. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton announced on Monday the new plan has a woman and girl-centered approach, according to the administration's fact sheet. Speaking at Johns Hopkins University, Clinton outlined the 6-year, $63 billion Obama administration initiative to bring global health care services to, quote, more people in more places. The administration's global health initiative has, quote, everything to do with foreign policy, she said. And I'm sure that last article will have most of you reeling in your skin, being that there's a good amount of people here in the U.S. that can't even afford health care. It says, Bank of England governor warns that Britons face higher inflation for longer. British consumers should prepare for lingering higher inflation, the Bank of England governor has warned, as latest figures show a sharp jump in food prices. And see, this is what I was talking about the sharp jump in food prices and stagflation and that. Figures from the Office of National Statistics showed a 3.4% increase in the cost of food over the last year, with fruit being 10% more expensive. The last year also saw a sharp rise in the cost of travel, which climbed an average of 7.8%. Says Mervyn King, the bank's governor, voiced surprise that the prices are higher than he had expected in a letter of explanation to the Chancellor's George Osborne. And that's what they always say, right? They're all surprised, right? Oh, we're all surprised. We just go ahead and spend all this money that doesn't exist from people who aren't born yet, and hey, everything's going to be swell. It's real socialist and lovey-dovey and liberal. Well, it's not sustainable. I don't know why they're so surprised. While the overall consumer prices edged down to 3.1% from 3.2% in June, it remains above the bank's own 2% target, and the small decline will do little to ease the fear of some economists that a high cost of living will undermine Britain's fragile economy. And see, here we go. Moving into this next article, quote, surprisingly bad economic news. Have you ever noticed how often the elitist economists in government, academia, and the media are surprised by bad economic news? They are constantly surprised by high unemployment numbers. They say the low manufacturing numbers were unexpected. They claim they didn't foresee such a great trade imbalance. When the Fed Open Market Committee met in June, it said its economic recovery was, quote, proceeding and was likely to advance at a moderate pace. At the same time, they were taking a tightening of monetary policy to fend off inflation. Here's this first example. Vice President Joe Biden has said we are in the summer of recovery. President Barack Obama has been saying his policies have, quote, pulled us back from the brink of another Great Depression. As recently as August 2nd, Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner, in an op-ed piece for the New York Times, wrote an uplifting column entitled, Welcome to the Recovery. And he wasn't being facetious. He wrote that exports are booming, private job growth has returned, businesses now have strong balance sheets. But then he mentions his surprise. Quote, the new data show that the recession was even deeper than previously estimated, Geithner wrote. Still, he says all economic measures represent an encouraging turnaround. He must have forgotten to tell that to the Fed. And he says because the Fed had an oops moment, it has decided inflation isn't an immediate threat after all, and they are loosening monetary policy again to try and stave off deflation and a second recession. But with the interest rate at zero, there is little left to do. This last article that I'll be covering is titled 10 Signs the U.S. is Becoming a Third World Country. This is from the Activist Post, and kudos to you, whoever is writing these articles at the Activist Post. You're putting up some really good articles and information here, so I appreciate it. It says the United States, by every measure, is hanging on by a thread to its first world status. Saddled by debt, engaged in wars on multiple fronts with the rising police state at home, declining economic productivity, and wild currency fluctuations all threaten America's future. And it says number 1 here, rising unemployment and poverty. Unemployment numbers, food stamps, and home foreclosures continue to reach new record highs. Economic dependence, the U.S. finished 2009 with a debt-to-GDP ratio of 85%, according to the IMF. Declining civil rights, everyday freedoms are often casualty of a society in collapse. It says 4, increasing political corruption. 5, military patrolling the streets. 6, failing infrastructure, talking about the bridges and that. 7, disappearing middle class. 8, devalued currency. 9, controlling the media. And 10, capital controls. I'd like to thank everyone for joining me in this news segment, and hope you join me again. Thank you.